So good morning. My name is Art Jones, and I am the principal consultant at the Art of Standing Out. And here at the Art of Standing Out, on Thursdays and Fridays, we interview standout personalities that can help us all stand out more and be more credible and find ourselves worthy of the ideas that we have and find our ways to present those ideas so we can stand out, so we can become the red umbrella in the sea of black umbrellas out there in the world, and get noticed. I use brand strategy and storytelling to help people market and sell better. And I think Mel and I might be kindred spirits in that regard, because she's really all about communications. And well, let me tell you a little bit about Mel Sherwood, what I found out from Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. Mel is the founder and director of Grow Your Potential. She has over 20 years experience in public, private, and nonprofit organizations, working in learning and development marketing, customer relations, and administration. She is a qualified trainer, mediator, and NLP practitioner, and has worked as an actor and singer in both Australia and the United Kingdom. Mel is also a multi-award winning speaker and was recently awarded the Professional Speaking Association Regional Member of the Year Award for Scotland. So welcome, Mel Sherwood.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
I need a little button I can push for the yay when you hear the applause. And as I was saying, when we were kind of in the warm-up or the green room, generally I like to find out about the journey, and that's kind of born out of this idea that I picked up when I heard a TED Talk by the author, Elizabeth Gilbert is her name. And she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and most recently Big Magic. And she had many books before she exploded with Eat, Pray, Love. So she's been an author for many decades now. And in that TED Talk, she talks about finding one's purpose. And she talks about the notion that some people are born like jackhammers and they just start drilling away. I'm going to be a dentist, and they know that at 3 years old, and they become a dentist. They're purpose driven, and that's the route that they take. And other people are like hummingbirds or bumblebees, and they go from one flower picking up some knowledge and another flower picking up some knowledge until some point they say, oh my gosh, with all of this knowledge, I can do that. And then they are directed. And because our brains love good stories, that's what I like doing on this channel. But today, I don't think we're going to do that. I'd like to hopefully impress you with my ability to be a good interviewer and invite you back to explore that story of yours, because I do want to get to the core of the value that you have to offer. And we're going to talk about the work that you do. So I'll summarize that. What to me looks like largely a jackhammer kind of existence for you. And this is what I picked up from LinkedIn. 26 years as a professional actor, singer, and presenter, 14 years in marketing and advertising. And I mean, that pretty much encapsulates it all. And that's pretty remarkable to be as focused. And so I want to invite you back now to come back and talk about how acting informs the work that you do. But I want to talk about the work that you do. And when I looked at your website, the first thing that really made me smile was bloomin' awesome presentations. Is that an Australian expression, or is that from where? Bloomin' awesome?
Maybe. I was probably stretching it a little bit, a lot of the names for my courses were connected with the whole Grow Your Potential theme. And so that's where the bloomin' awesome presentation
it got my attention. If it was intended to get my attention, I got it. in Boston, in the US, they will say wicked awesome. And that's an expression. So bloomin' awesome, I get that.
Awesome. That's bloomin' awesome. It probably is quite Australian or maybe British as well. But I should probably point out, you said obviously that I live in Edinburgh, but I'm Australian. I've been in Edinburgh for about 10 years. But prior to that, I lived in Melbourne.
Okay, very good. Thanks for straightening that out. let's go through the products as you productize the work that you do. And I'll just read them off. And I want to go back to the one. So I'll start with this one: credibility killers and how to avoid them. Weeding out self-doubt, mm-hmm. Cultivate communications, and bloomin' awesome presentations. I picked those 4, and there are more courses and workshops and work that you do. But let's start with weeding out self-doubt and talk a little bit about that work, how you do it, how long it takes for some. You know, talk about it. Yeah, tell us about weeding out self-doubt.
Yeah, I think self-doubt I think everybody has self-doubt in some areas, and even the most confident person would sometimes have a little bit of doubt, and especially if you're stretching beyond your comfort zone, you're not as comfortable as you might be. But for me, it's really the strategies that I've learned over the years of just being me and living life and having the experiences that I've had, I'm now sharing with other people. And some of those things are as simple as listening to your self-talk. I think there's 4 elements to communication. When you think about you can be talking to a great big audience of 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever it might be. Then you've got maybe a smaller audience where you're in a meeting or a smaller event, or even in a social gathering where there's more than a couple of people. Then there's the one-to-one conversation, and then there's that conversation that you have with yourself. And the one that you have with yourself impacts your entire world. So if that conversation is not positive and supportive and encouraging to yourself about yourself, then you're just feeding any negativity and any self-doubt. So one of the first steps is becoming aware of your self-talk. And along with that kind of growing gardening kind of theme, I have a Weed Out Wednesday where I just post a little reminder to everybody to just take note of your thoughts or your behaviors or whatever's in your life that's not serving you, and weed it out and replace it with something more positive and something more helpful. Wow. So and I tend to do it I do it myself, just because we do unless we're aware of the conversations that we're having with ourselves, they can be completely steering our lives in a direction that we might not even, we wouldn't be aware of, but we certainly may not want if that doubt's creeping in and we're really being quite neglectful of what's going on up here. This is the key to everything, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. There's, to build on that, and it just made me think of an old Cherokee Native American Indian tale that's told, and it's called The Story of the Two Wolves. Have you heard that one?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So I'll just quickly read it because I think it's applicable to this notion of weeding out Wednesdays and self-doubt. It goes like this. It says, an old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside of me, he said to the boy. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. Whew, wow. He continued, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win, grandfather? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed.
That's so true. I have heard the story, but a slightly different version of it. Yeah, you're absolutely right, though. We fertilize our gardens, and if we nurture our gardens of our minds, for example, and tend to them in a loving and generous and encouraging way, then of course that we're going to grow that part of it. But yeah, absolutely, feed it with the other, and it becomes bigger and bigger.
So is that coaching? Are there tricks and tips that you give to your clients to help them weed out the self-doubt, or what is that?
Yeah, if I'm working with individuals, on a one-to-one basis, I tend to get them to really start just, well, noticing their self-talk. But one of the things that I get them to do is to write down 5 great things that they like about themselves. And some people find that really difficult. And it's a real shame. And it breaks my heart, really, to think that some people really struggle to find one thing that they like about themselves. When I first started my business, I was seeing more clients like that. My work's kind of shifted a little bit in terms of who I'm working with now. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot in a startup capacity as well. So if anyone is an entrepreneur, they generally got at least enough conviction in themselves to get out there and try something and be out on their own and building a team or whatever they're doing, whether it's a solopreneur or what. So the people that I see now don't have as much of that negative self-talk as maybe I did when I first started my business. But even someone who can appear the most confident and outgoing, sometimes there's so much going on inside that really stops them and from achieving their best, that it's really crucial to help them recognize that. So if I'm in a coaching session, I'll reflect back to them their self-talk or the words that they're using.
You're listening for the words they're using to pick out of their conversation to say, well, that word, with the power of that word, you're really upsetting the balance.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I'm never going to be able to speak well in public. Really? It's about, never is a strong word. So it's just helping people hear what they're saying. I hate public speaking. Really?
Really?
Would you love it?
It's like being a mirror or providing them with the echo and making sure that they hear what they're saying so they can then, acknowledge that they're talking themselves out of their own ability. And I guess that leads us to this notion of credibility killers and how to avoid them. And just to let everybody know, I mean, we're here and we're talking to Mels Sherwood, founder of Grow Potential, about the power of communications and the work that she does. And we're going to chat a little bit more, but eventually we'll open up the seat and we'll invite people in that have questions that want to learn more about Mel or ask Mel to give them a little coaching here in the real world, because they've got a TED Talk tomorrow, and we'll see that happening in real time. So credibility killers, I guess those are the kind of things that really is a self-talk, or perhaps it's when you present with your hands in your pocket. Or
yeah. So in the credibility killers session that I run, I look at 5 areas of credibility. Credibility, if you think about it, it can be as much as or simple as doing what you say you're going to do, or I don't know, just your qualifications, your expertise, your skills that you've got. So some people rely on that. But in actual fact, our non-verbal cues and our language patterns can sometimes really undermine our credibility without us even realizing it. So I look at 5 areas, and the first one being attitude, which underpins everything. And yes, that's connected to the self-talk as well. But you show up with an arrogant, negative, I can't do this kind of attitude. It's going to be the rest of your communication is going to reflect that. Yeah. So, but on the flip side, if you turn up with a positive, helpful, confident attitude, people are going to warm to you and you'll achieve more in your life and your communication than the other way. But what happens is that so your attitude underpins everything, but other things that impact on your credibility are things like your image. So how do you show up? What are you wearing? Regardless of whether we like it or not, we are potentially, people are going to be judging us. Within a split second before we've even opened our mouth to talk, people are judging us based on what we look like. And that's not saying you have to look a particular way, but it's about becoming aware of how you're being perceived and how you want to be perceived. So if you turn up to a certain event, for example, when you're speaking in public, you have a talk to give, you need to have an understanding about what the event is and what's appropriate to wear for the situation, and flex your own style. It doesn't mean you have to give up your authentic you and how you like to express yourself in the way that you look, but it does mean that you have to be mindful of what you're wanting people
Mel, it's interesting
about you.
It's interesting you say that, because this evening, I think at 5 p.m., I'm doing another blab, and it's with a stylist from the fashion industry that's going to really try to address that exact question. If you don't know what your brand style is, if you don't know how you're presenting, then maybe you need to ask a stylist for help. Because
absolutely, and
it makes a huge difference. I mean, it's the notion of Malcolm Gladwell's book now that's 15, 12 years old or whatever. The notion of blink. You only get a moment when people blink and they see you and they're like, well, he's dressed in Y, right? And that doesn't allow you then to present, because you can't get past that barrier that's already been raised.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It makes it so hard.
Unless you call it. And so I've seen some people say it, rather than the way they look being the elephant in the room, they will make a joke or a comment about it. And, but that's why it's so crucial to always know who your audience is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can tailor whatever you do effectively. But so from your image, there's also your body language. So your attitude will impact on that as well. Whatever you're bringing will impact your body language. If you're nervous and feeling awkward and uncomfortable, you'll shut down your body language. You won't make any eye contact, and it'll make everyone a bit uncomfortable and feeling awkward. If you're wringing your hands, or you've got any kind of nervous tics, and that could be different for everyone, that it can undermine your credibility. Once again, if you look nervous and uncertain, it's not going to help anyone have a confidence in what you're saying or offering. So so there's your image, your body language, your tone of voice as well, your vocal delivery. If you I don't know, if you speak in a monotone and go on and on and on and bore everyone to death with your monotone voice,
everybody's
and you don't sound very interested. I'm going to stop, or everyone will switch off. So it's about adding some vocal variety and helping people really. It enhances your communication. It helps the message to stick when you use your voice effectively.
Yeah.
But when we're nervous, and I say this from the public speaking point of view again, or anywhere, but it shows up for people when they're standing in front of an audience, is that we don't breathe effectively, and our nerves impact our body, and everything tightens up. And quite often, and especially for women, our voice will go up higher, and the higher your voice, the less credible you sound sometimes. So, which is why you don't hear newsreaders necessarily with a high-pitched voice, because those lower tones sound more authoritative and
interesting.
So it's just something, once again, to be aware of. And then the fifth element that I talk about is the words and phrases that we use. So if I'm always going through people. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are pitching for investment and funding and that sort of thing, and I'll go through their written pitch and just cross out all of them. We think we'll turn over, £1 million by year 3 or whatever. What you think? Well, I don't think an investment.
Well, get out of here. We're not.
Yeah. Or we hope that'll be all right. And quite often, and I do notice this more in women than in men, but women are quite apologetic in their speech sometimes. So rather than just asking a question outright, they'll say, "Oh, do you mind if I just ask a question?" And then they've kind of almost undermined their credibility to begin with. Just ask the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, you ask the closed-ended question, you stand the opportunity to get a yes or a no.
Or a no.
Right. You can only answer that question one of two ways, yes or no. So
absolutely.
Why bother asking it?
Yeah, and as I asked that question, it reminded me about the voice again, and the tone and the inflection in our voice, because I hear quite a lot of people, and certainly as an Australian, we have a tendency to have an upward inflection at the end of our sentences. So everything that we make a statement sounds like a question. Can you hear the difference?
I can hear the difference. Yeah, I can.
So we really need to be aware of what's going on, because if I say, hi, I'm Mel from Grow Your Potential, you're thinking, are you sure
really?
about that?
Yeah. And it's kind of subliminal almost, because you don't have to really hear it. You hear it, but you hear it as a undertone, right? And your brain thinks question, and you never get past that. And the unconscious picks it up almost faster than the conscious mind does. And it's funny, everything that you've talked about, these 5 points, Mel, each one of them is so subtle that we might think, oh, that's just a little deal. That's not a big thing. Well, really, it is a huge thing. And there's a book that I've just finished reading. It's the title is How, and it says how we do everything. Now, how we do anything means everything. And that's kind of what you've been talking about here. It's attitude. You know, if we're wringing our hands and sweat is pouring down our face before we go on stage, you've got to fix that, because you're not going to give a good presentation. And I think I've heard tales of Tony Robbins backstage jumping up and down and flailing his arms and kind of going crazy, trying to get the endorphins flowing. So when he gets to the podium, he's excited, he's on point, and he's in the moment before he goes to the moment. And
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And words and phrases, oh my gosh, I can see how powerful that is. And, you know, let's do this, because I've got questions, but I know that there are people in the stream that probably have questions too. Before I open the seat, if you guys would tweet it out and let your colleagues know, I'm going to put the /N down here in the stream to notify my followers. If you guys would do the same, then we'll get more people that will benefit from what Mel has to offer. And I'm opening the seat up, so for those with thoughtful and insightful and compelling questions that we can ask Mel so we can all learn more, please feel free to jump in the seat and ask a question and give everybody a chance to find out what they need to know or would like to know. And we have Roy Montero coming in. Hey, Roy. What happened, Roy? Come back again. You moved too fast. Roy, you were there and then you weren't. Were you just, there you go. I thought maybe you just moused over the coming into the seat.
Yeah. Hey guys, sorry, Art. Hi again, Mel.
Hello.
Good to see you. So communication and confidence and credibility and conviction. Can we think of any more C words? Thank you.
Yeah, lots actually.
So, yeah, I have learned for the last 20 years of my life how to communicate so much better than the first 38 years of my life. And I resonate with everything you're saying. I wonder if you could add, is this also applicable, that's easy for me to say, online? It is offline, or is there something different to the online element that we need to be aware of when communicating back and forth? So can we assume that the way we communicate offline is the same online, or is there another thing that we need to learn so that we can have the right mindset?
That's an interesting question, actually. Are you talking about online in this kind of environment?
Yeah, basically the virtual environment of what we're doing here, face-to-face or voice-to-voice. I'm not talking about text. That's really difficult. Most people miss, you know, what the real deep meaning of text messages are. But like you're talking about with voice, their inflections and so on, and how you show up here in video on the virtual landscape. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I'm always very conscious about what people can see behind me, or whether there's a plant hanging out of my head, depending what the background's looking like. It's like that. Yeah. But it is just, I mean, how you are online, offline, anywhere, people want the authentic you. So however you show up, then you know that's how people are going to perceive you. If you want to be perceived as casual and relaxed and easygoing, then that's the attitude you have to bring, and that then would be reflected in your image and the words that you use and your body language. If you wanted to turn up as a, I don't know, completely uptight or whatever, then your whole everything's going to be communicating that. We can't avoid that, really. We can't say one thing. We really need to have our words and our nonverbal communication congruent. I see a lot of people where they talk about how passionate they are about their business, and I know that they're passionate, but they say it with the least amount of passion I've ever seen. And it really, so this, you know what I mean? They're just kind of,
yes,
yeah, we're really passionate about this, and we're going to do this, this, and this. It's like, oh, really? Come on, show me a bit of that. And that's one of the things that I'm able to do, because I know people are passionate about what they do, but quite often people don't know how to express that. And it's one of the things that I suppose my acting background has helped me with, the ability to express whatever I'm feeling through my body language and my vocal tone and what have you. So I kind of have this thing where I reach in and help people find and express their inner oomph, just that edge, that energy that really brings them to light. But it has to be authentic for them, because for me, yes, I think, and Roy, we were talking about this morning, earlier today, where I'm very animated, and so that's why I was told when I was an actor, oh, you're too big for TV, because it's all magnified on TV. And then, so it's about kind of, once again, being aware of the environment that you're in. But for me, I think as long as you're authentic, it doesn't matter how you're communicating, if it's true to you, and that you're conscious about the effect that you're having on other people.
So Mel, here's a question for you that I spend a lot of time talking to clients about. Know your audience, know your ideal prospect, know the narrative of the person you're speaking to, so you can insert your story into their narrative, and that calls them to action. That becomes a visceral experience for your audience when you know them that well. So I know that's know your audience is number 3 in the 5 things that you described. Talk a little bit about that, if you will, in your practice. How do you help people know their audiences?
I have a list of questions. Actually, I've got a template that I share with my clients and my workshop participants, because people don't think as far as they need to sometimes with the knowledge that they really need about their audience. And this obviously in the work that you do, Art, it's it's crucial, and it's whatever communication that you're doing, whether it's written communication or you're speaking one-to-one with someone, or you're standing in front of an audience of 1,000. It's the same input and preparation is required to tailor what you're doing to connect with them. And as you said, if you the more you know about them, and that's talking to them, finding out, and just reflecting back the language that they use as well. So you're speaking in the same language, but when I say the same language, I mean obviously the same words.
The vernacular of the industry that you're speaking to, financial services versus insurance versus medical, right? Everybody, they've got their own vernacular that you might want to use, because then you'll be part of them there. You'll be like them.
If I may, I'd like to add to what's going on right here. So I use the Starbuckian term, right? Speaking their vernacular. My wife is a Starbuckian, I am not. So usually that's enough said, right? Because you immediately know that when I start speaking about Starbucks, I've never ordered, but I can only imagine if I ever went up to order, everybody would go, "You're not from around here, are you?" So it's knowing the industry jargon, right? That's what we're speaking of. And so that way people are receptive, because they're like, "Oh, look, one of us." Right? Other than saying, "Oh my goodness, an alien." They don't know why are they talking to me? Because there's a disconnect. So I just wanted to add that.
That's a good add, Roy, because it's what I think you're describing is there's the tribe that goes to Starbucks.
Yes.
Right. And an example is, I'm in Paris. I'm trying to find the Louvre. I'm on the metro, and it's just me, and I'm an English speaker. I have a little French, but not much, not enough to find out, to ask the questions. It's when's the stop for the Louvre, right? And on that car, as I'm strap hanging, a little nervous about not getting to where I want to go, and hearing everybody speaking French around me, I hear English on the other end of the car. And all of a sudden I'm with my tribe. And I find my way through the crowd and I say, oh my gosh, you speak English? And I say, yeah, I'm from Cincinnati. Really? I'm from Tucson. And now there's that common bond. They're strangers, but no longer are we strangers. We are from the same tribe. We speak the same language. And I'll find a Louvre, but I'll also find a new friend in France. And I think when we use that metaphor and think of the audience and going to the podium, if we know that when we stride to the podium, if I use the language of medicine when I'm in front of financial services people, because I just came from a medical conference, now I'm using the same presentation in front of the financial services conference, it's going to fall flat. They're like, that word, I think I understand it, but why is he using it here? I understand it, but why is he talking to us with that word? And that goes to not just credibility, but goes to your desire, to your intent. Are you really here to speak to us, or you're just speaking to us?
Yeah, and I think what's another part of it too is if you are speaking with someone or you're presenting, you need to know why the people are there, and they need to know why you're there. You need to know if they know why they're there. So, do you know what I mean? So, and you need to know if they want to be there or if they're there because it's compulsory for them to be there. You need to have an understanding about what they might already think about the topic that you're speaking about or about you, and how you might address that in your presentation. You need to know if you're in a sales meeting, for example, you need to know who in there is the decision makers and who's the influencers. You've got to drill down and find out as much as you possibly can about your audience so that you can tailor it and you can be prepared for all outcomes. But unless you capture the attention of your audience from the beginning, you only have a very short space of time for them to be making judgments about you. And there's a statistic floating about that people make 11 judgments about you in the first 7 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So you need to make, and you need to make sure that those are the judgments that you want them to make about you. And then I read somewhere, and I don't know where, that it takes another 13 interactions with someone after your first meeting with them for them to change their opinion of you. Do you know where that stat comes from? Or I can't remember where I read it out.
I'm not sure if I know there's a metric that says it takes 14 interactions to make a sale. And on the buyer's journey, from their first visit to meet you at a networking event, to the time they go to your website, to the time that they get your email and all of that, this other metric, the 13 interactions to repair a bad start, I'd have to research that, but that's an interesting one. The interesting thing, I think, Mel, in the work that you and I do is similar, is that I tell people you have to accept the responsibility to take the commitment to do the work well before you go to the podium. Because if you don't have preparation, you don't prepare like you want to prepare and commit to preparing. You might have the presentation already baked, right? I've got the slides, I'll just go. But if you do the work to really understand your audience, then those slides that you already have, you can use the content that builds around those slides to really tailor it to reach that audience. But if you don't do the work, you're just going to be like every other presenter that has somebody sitting in row 3 that's falling asleep because you're boring. You're not speaking to them. And speaking to them,
it's disrespectful to your audience to not prepare.
And prepare, a lot of people think preparing is just, I'll create the slides. I know I'm talking to finance, I'm going to create the slides, and then I'll go present the slides. I think what you and I are saying is preparation means that I look at the LinkedIn pages of the senior executives that are asking me to come in, and then on LinkedIn, and maybe I look at some of the people from the company that are in that line of business that I expect to be in there, and I want to know what they're posting about. I want to drill down and make it so granular that I almost know what magnet they're putting on their refrigerator, right? I mean, if I do that if I have that kind of effort, then of course I know the narrative of the company, their financial services. But when I know the narrative of the leadership and the culture, then I have the opportunity in the palm of my hand. And it's then the presentation should merge like this, and it's a wonderful thing. If I just have the presentation, it's just this thing sitting out there in the ether, and people are like, yeah, okay, we've heard this before. But when you make the connection, and that leads me to another, because you talk about the power of words and phrases we use. Does that also mean that in your intention that it's the words and phrases that are built into the stories that we tell? Because as an actor, I imagine storytelling is part of your experience. Is storytelling part of the work that you do with the people you work with?
Yeah, and I think we all know how powerful storytelling is. We love stories. We've loved stories since we were children, and stories are what stick. So, and you obviously know that in your line of work. So, but yes, the words that you choose to use, can have a definite impact. And what I tend to find, if people are preparing for a presentation, they quite often will put in too many words and speak very quickly and not allow the story to unfold and to be processed by the people listening. So I've kind of got a little bit off track there. Sorry, I just realised I was kind of going on a tangent there. But yeah.
No, I think that's and I think Paul Fire said you have to be flexible, because you never know what's going to happen in the course of your presentation. And I remember a presentation where it was my turn to go on, and all of a sudden all the technology behind me failed. And I could wait. I could be there, but lean on the podium and wait for the technology guys to come and fix it. Or I could give them a few minutes, but then just begin. So then it was me, without the support of the slide deck and only the content in my head, to present. And I turned it from me and the slides to me in interaction with the audience, and being in the aisles and engaging it, and going to Paul Fire's comment. I was what Bruce Lee, the martial artist, once said, be like water. So I was lucky that day that I was feeling good about myself, and I just shifted from, this is what I was going to do, this is what I prepared to do for quite a long time. Now this is what I'm going to do and deliver it this way. And I think it was a rather satisfying experience to turn lemons, as it could have been, into lemonade.
Absolutely. And you probably found it was one of your best presentations, because you just had that true connection, and you reacted to what the audience was needing.
And I had to use, I thought if I'm gonna fail at this, I might as well fail by having fun with the audience. And so and it wasn't a fail, it was really a win, because the audience was engaged, and it wasn't a presentation as much as it really was an engaging conversation. Where they had a voice, I think, is really what turned it around.
Yeah, and what's interesting, the style of presenting has changed a lot over the last 15, 20, 30 years, where it used to be quite formal, and now it is conversational. And I often say to people, if you people who say to me, I'm okay in a small group of people, but as soon as I'm standing up in front of 10 or more people, that's when I clam up and I get really scared. And that's a real common experience for people. But if you flip that around and think, public speaking really is just a series of one-to-one conversations. So first of all, I speak with one person, and then I finish that point or whatever, and I speak to another person, and I make eye contact with individuals in the audience. Now, there are techniques, obviously, you can use when the audience is large and there's 1,000 people. You're not going to be necessarily able to make eye contact with that many people. But once you connect with one person in the audience, the magic happens. It starts to ripple, has a ripple effect amongst the audience. So all the people around that person that you connected with will feel like they've been connected with as well, that you've connected with them as well. Then you move to someone else in a different part of the audience, and you do the same again. And it is that one-to-one conversation. So if you flip around this whole, I hate speaking to an audience, think of it as just a series of one-to-one conversations.
That's a very powerful. What do you think of that, Roy? That's a powerful idea.
Yeah, no, I had a bunch of thoughts swimming in my head. So one of the thoughts I had was, so if I'm falling asleep and you're speaking, Mel, a way for you to maybe wake me up is to have me interact with you by asking me a question straight on, one-to-one, but you're asking the whole entire audience. And if you blah, 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 if you're like me, have you done this? Raise your hand. And if you get them involved, so now the audience gets to raise their hand or not. And you want to, form your questions such that the greater amount of the audience participants will raise their hand and become interactive with you. It might just wake them up a little bit or put them back on track, because yes, it is easy to doze off sometimes. So Mel, would you recommend that as well?
Not when I'm presenting, Roy.
Audience interactive?
You would never be falling asleep in one of my presentations. I hope not.
You just might break out in song or something like that. And
I might too.
You're going to make sure of that. It's like, I got a ruler here.
So listen, we've got Brian and Paul and Daryl and Grammy, Donnie, Glenn, and Maya. If you want to join Mel and Roy and I in this open seat and ask Mel a question about your next presentation, please come in and take a seat and join the conversation. I'm finding this fascinating. The little tidbits. Public speaking is just about one-to-one conversations. The style of presenting has changed, and so much has changed, from 1999 to 2016, that I think a lot of people are still creating slide presentations that they really want to make sure they've got, a lot of points on every slide.
Yeah.
And they want to have as many slides as they can, because the more slides I have, when I turn around and I read the slide, I won't be at a loss for words. And, that is so disconnecting, but it's so last century, because that's the way people presented in the last century. You looked at the back of my bald head the whole time and never saw my eyes.
I very, very rarely use slides. And I encourage everybody who is, quite often people think, oh, I've got to do a presentation, and they immediately open up PowerPoint or Prezi or whatever it might be and start creating the content. But you can't create the content until I've got the 3 C's. We were talking about, can we have any more C's before, Roy? So I have 3 C's to creating a picture or a presentation. And the first one is clarify your objective. So be very, very clear about what it is that you want your audience to think, feel, or do at the end of that presentation. So once you're clear on the objective, it makes it much easier to know what to put into it. And part of clarifying the objective is around knowing the audience. But then you move on to creating the content, and that's when people want to get straight into the PowerPoint thing. But
that's really
one
good.
of the biggest mistakes people make is using PowerPoint for themselves. PowerPoint is not for the presenter or PowerPoint or anything similar. Visual aids are for the audience. They're to enhance the message, helping the audience understand the message. So if you look at your presentation, create it first. Outline what you're going to talk about and what examples and stories you're going to use, what case studies or whatever. Think about that before you even think about how can I best enhance the understanding of this message with visual aids. And sometimes you don't need visual aids at all, and the language and the presenter is enough. Sometimes it can be far more interesting for people to listen and really connect rather than have to be looking at a PowerPoint screen. And what you'll find is that people quite often like PowerPoint because it takes the focus off them. And the more bullet points they put up, then the more people can look up and read it and not look at the presenter. But if you have all the information on the PowerPoint slides, not only does it make it difficult to read, but you might as well not even be there. You've made yourself redundant as the presenter, because you might have as well just given them a handout and said, "See you later, enjoy that."
I'm sorry.
Go for it.
No, I was going to say Guy Kawasaki, a venture capitalist that that worked with Steve Jobs in the C-suite years ago, says that the presentation should be no more than 10 slides. And if you know your audience and everyone in your audience is going to be 22, you can use a 14-point font on that one line on that one slide. If your audience is a bunch of graybeards and they're over 45 or 50, you might want to use a larger point size, because the people in the back of the room won't be able to see the text on the slide anyway. Yeah. And so that really goes to knowing your audience and minimizing your use of slides. And I think people have tried to model Steve Jobs, who was really about the minimalist approach with his business and his way of presenting, because there might be one image on the slide, and then he supplied the words that surrounded that image, and it becomes more engaging, more captivating, because all our eyes are on you and that image, and the story you're telling about that image is what goes into the heart and mind of the people in the audience, which is really what you want. And if you're telling them a story using the words that you so aptly put, Mel, the words that have power, that words that have meaning to your audience, that story becomes repeatable when they leave the auditorium. And somebody says, well, how was that presentation? Was it boring as usual? And they say, no, you know what? They told me a story about this thing, and they can repeat the story that they heard. And they can use the words that you used. And if your presentation is just to fill the room with noise for the 30 minutes you're at the podium, okay, then mission accomplished. But if your mission is to give them value and then have them leave the room and go propagate your ideas throughout the world, then you need to use Mel's 5 principles, right? You need to know to go and approach and begin with the right attitude. You have to understand it, your style, whether you're wearing a shawl collared sweater or a sport coat and a tie, you have to know that it's the appropriate style for the audience that you're engaging. You have to know the language of your audience. You have to understand that you can't stand at the podium with your keys in your pocket and make this jinkle jangle sound as your fingers tickle your keys, because it's annoying. It might be a personal tick. It might be something that gives you comfort, but it doesn't do anything for the audience. And then knowing the words and phrases that you should be using are everything. And I'm really trying to summarize what you were sharing with us earlier, Mel, and because I think that each one of those are gems, and each one of those takes commitment to one having self-awareness that I need to work on these things.
I have a quick add to what we're talking about here about slides. So what I've noticed about Seth Godin, and he's one of my favorite business authors, love listening to the man. He makes me laugh. And the way he does it is he uses a slide that makes me laugh. His slides are not continuous throughout his whole presentation. He only has certain slides, and every time he brings on a slide, the whole audience just bursts out laughing. Yeah. Because that's what he wants. He wants that engagement of the laugh, right? So he's talking about something, and then all of a sudden here comes this slide, and everybody's laughing. I just noticed that about Seth, and I think a lot of others who are great presenters do that, right? They interact with us, show a slide that's funny. Mel, is that a way to get to our hearts, is through humor?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the key ways. We all like people who make us smile. We feel good, and it's the quickest way to build rapport is when you smile. So to get to relax your audience with humor is brilliant. Not everyone's great at it, but the idea of using visual humor, as long as it connects with the topic, I get a bit frustrated sometimes where people stick things in presentations just to make the audience laugh, but it's not connected to the topic, and it doesn't add value to the presentation in any other way except a bit of a chuckle. I don't mind it once or twice maybe in a presentation, but sometimes I've seen presenters where they just throw in all sorts of stuff just to make people laugh. But
they're trying to be clever more than they are trying to be intentional. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we're just touching on about the minimal use of slides and not using slides, it's much more powerful to simply bring up an image, one clean, clear image that evokes emotion when you for a specific point, and then once you're not talking about that, black the screen. And there, most clickers you'll have a button that you can press. If you don't have a clicker on and you've got your laptop there, just press the B key, and it will make the screen go black. And then the audience can then bring their attention back to you versus staring up at a screen. And you'll see it's another way to do it as well with the clicker. If sometimes the venue may not have a great setup, so that if you want to move from one place to the other, you have to walk literally in front of the projector, so that you're walking across the screen. And you can simply avoid that distraction by making the screen go black before you walk across, and then bringing the slide back up again when you get to the other side. So these are little things that can really enhance your presentation. It makes it more professional, because there's nothing worse than a presenter kind of continually walking in front of the slides. It's so frustrating.
Well, I think what you're saying is, it kind of goes to that book I just finished, that how you do anything means everything. And I guess if I was shooting a video, I would have an intro and an outro. I would have text that I would insert over the video at certain points to add value to the conversation. And we have the same opportunity when we're at the podium in real time. If we know the tricks that you're sharing with us, like the hitting the B key to send the screen to black, that's brilliant. I've never heard that before, and I will use that in the future, because I want all eyes on me. I want to focus on what I have to share, not that slide that's on the screen that you're just mindlessly staring at some point. And these tips are really incredibly wonderful and useful. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. On your website, is there a free guide that you allow people to download?
There is. It's actually a Know Your Audience guide. So we were talking about how important it is to know your audience. And there's a guide on there that will just give you some questions to start thinking about what you need to know about your audience in order to tailor your presentation. So
tell us a little bit about that guide while I find your website. Just put the link to your website in there, and so everybody can download that now, and those on replay can see it and find it as well.
Sure. So yeah, it really is along the lines of what we've been talking about. So knowing, I don't know, the demographics, where do they live, who are they, what are their likes, what keeps them up at night, what age are they? Of course, your presentation is going to be very different to deliver if you're delivering it to a group of 6-year-olds to a group of 80-year-olds. So you need to understand all these things so you can tailor your content and your delivery effectively. Like I said before, who's the decision maker? How many other people need to make a decision? Thinking about where the venue, where it is, how many people will be in the audience. If it's an audience of 10, you're going to have a different preparation and perhaps different style than you're going to have if it's a much larger venue. And so knowing what the room setup is, are you going to be on a stage? Are you going to be standing behind a lectern? Are you going to be able to move around? Can you actually go into the audience or not? I like to find out as much as I can about the audience and the environment that I'll be speaking in beforehand, to the point where I try and get a photograph or as much information as I can about the venue so that I know what the backdrop will be. So I make sure my outfit doesn't clash, or I don't blend in and just end up like a talking head.
I've actually gone to visit the venue as often as I get a chance, if I can't get a photo like you said, and it does make a huge difference, because you can walk around the room, you can stand in the back of the room and see how well your voice travels and how well the audio works. And preparation, it really means everything. And I committed that we keep this to 45 minutes, and we're at 53, and we could probably keep going quite a lot. But I think what we should do, because there's so much more that we could talk about, and I know your time is valuable. And isn't it evening where you are?
It's 7 minutes to 6 p.m.
It's the dinner time, and who wants to keep
it's dinner time almost.
Yes. So listen, I want to say thank you to Mels Sherwood, founder of Grow Potential. Awesome.
Grow your potential.
Grow your potential. Grow your potential, and awesome speaker and coach to help us accomplish more with our public speaking. Our attitude and style, and giving us tips and tricks on knowing our audience. And this has really been fruitful. I've got 2 pages of notes here, Mel, that I really will use as I go forward and learn how to present better and share some of these ideas with the audience that I serve. And because you are so expert at this and have so many years of acting and singing training that no doubt serves you in the work that you do, along with all the NLP experience that you bring to the conversation. It's a very, very powerful mashup of skill sets that I will send people to you as well, that really need to get out of the rut and confident enough to stand up to the podium so they can stand out. So thank you, Mel Sherwood, for spending an hour on Blab with us and sharing so much of what you know and what you've learned over the years about helping people become better presenters and helping them become pitch-tastic and make bloomin' awesome presentations. So Mel, tell people how they can get in touch with you and any promotions that you have coming up or anything like that.
Thank you. I so appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I thank you for inviting me to chat with you. It's been really fabulous. How people can get in touch with me via my website. It's a little challenging to describe it on the live chat, but it's www.grow-your-potential.com. Or you can contact me via Twitter as well. And if you look actually on Twitter, there's a pinned tweet where you can download my top 5 tips to public speaking success. So my Twitter address is @grow_potential.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again for making an hour of your time, our time, and sharing so much of your knowledge with us. It's been wonderful. And every Thursday and Friday, and sometimes on Saturday, I, the principal consultant of the Art of Standing Out, speak with standout professionals that help us all stand out. And standing out is a way to rise above all the noise so we can accomplish more. So tune in again. And until next time, this is Art Jones, the principal consultant at the Art of Standing Out, signing off for my guest, Mel Sherwood, and I.